First Kings chapter 4. First Kings chapter 4. And we the last little story that we heard was Solomon kind of getting all of his wisdom, and because of that, he was given all kinds of wealth and all of that. And one of the things that really struck me as we were talking about it was what the definition of that wisdom may be. That this about cutting the woman in half may be kind of like an overall idea about what wisdom looks like, rather than one singular story. But as we continue through the scriptures here, we see that Solomon continuing to use that wisdom. But just like everything, when we talk about kings and all that stuff, there is a fall coming. So like that's super fun. Always something good to look forward to, right? Like so. So we'll do chapter 4, and it's not too long, so we'll kind of go through all of that. And there's some interesting things going on here. So
this is corporate reorganization.
Yes. So like so his corporate reorganization. That's a good way of putting it. And think about what that means with him having this wisdom now. So So let's see here. So we'll share a screen. Hit that button, share. And Midget, if the echo doesn't go away, let me know. All right, here we go.
So King Solomon was king over all Israel, and these were his officials: Azariah, the son of Zadok the priest, Elihoreph and Ahijah, the sons of Shisha, scribes, Jehoshaphat, the son of Ahilud, the recorder, Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, over the army, Zadok and Abiathar, the priests, Azariah, the son of Nathan, over the officers, Zabud, the son of Nathan, a priest and the king's friend, Ahisha, over the household, and Adoniram, the son of Abda, over the labor force. And Solomon had 12 governors over all Israel, who provided food for the king and his household. Each one made provision for 1 month of the year. These are their names: Ben-Hur in the mountains of Ephraim, Ben-Dekah in Makaz, Shealbim, Beth-Shemesh, and Elon-Beth-Hanan. Ben-Hesed in Aruboth, to him belongs Soko and all the land of Hepher. Ben-Abinadab in all the regions of Dor, he had Taphath, the daughter of Solomon as wife. Baana, the son of Ahilud, in Tanakh, Megiddo, and all Beth-Shean, which is beside Zeratan, below Jezreel. From Beth-Shean to Abel-Meholah, as far as the other side of Jokneam. Ben-Geber in Ramoth-Gilead, to him belong the towns of Jair, the son of Manasseh, in Gilead. To him also belonged the region of Argab in Bashan. 60 large cities with walls and bronze gate bars. Ahinadab, the son of Iddo, in Mahanaim. Ahimaaz in Naphtali. He also took Basemath, the daughter of Solomon, as wife. Baana, the son of Hushai, in Asher and Elath. Jehoshaphat, the son of Peruah, in Issachar. Shimei, the son of Elah, in Benjamin. Geber, the son of Uri, in the land of Gilead, in the country of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and of Og, king of Bashan. He was the only governor who was in the land. Judah and Israel were as numerous as the sand by the sea in multitude, eating and drinking and rejoicing. So Solomon reigned over all kingdoms, from the river to the land of the Philistines, as far as the border of Egypt. They brought tribute and served Solomon all the days of his life. Now Solomon's provision for one day was 30 cors of fine flour, 60 cors of meal, 10 fatted oxen, 20 oxen from the pastures, and 100 sheep. besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted fowl. For he had dominion over all the region on this side of the river, from Tiphsah even to Gazan, namely over all the kings on this side of the river, and he had peace on every side all around him. And Judah and Israel dwelt safely, each man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan as far as Beersheba, all the days of Solomon. Solomon had 40,000 stalls of horses for his chariots, and 12,000 horsemen. And these governors, each man in his month, provided food for King Solomon and for all who came to King Solomon's table. There was no lack in their supply. They also brought barley and straw to the proper place for the horses and steeds, each man according to his charge. And God gave Solomon wisdom and exceedingly great understanding, and largeness of heart, like the sand on the seashore. Thus Solomon's wisdom excelled the wisdom of all the men of the East, and all the wisdom of Egypt. For he was wiser than all men, than Ethan the Ezrahite, and Heman, Calcol, and Dada, the sons of Mahal, and his fame was in all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs were 1,005. Also he spoke of trees, from the cedar tree of Lebanon, even to the hyssop that springs out of the wall. He spoke also of animals, of birds, of creeping things, and of fish. And men of all nations, from all the kings of the earth, who had heard of his wisdom, came to hear the wisdom of Solomon.
All right. Okay.
What a resume.
Yeah. And that's kind of, I think it's a good word for this chapter here, is resume. So what stood out? I think we're kind of building here to things.
Interesting, just a small note from chapter 4, verse 6, where it says, Eshiar in charge of the palace, and Adoram, son of Abda, in charge of labor. It said the labor forces, and the Jewish Bible says forced labor.
That's an interesting little. That's it. That's an interesting one. Yeah. Like that. That's whenever we see words like that around, it's important. It's important stuff because and we have to live. Whenever we see that stuff around, we have to live in two realms. We have to live in the realm of that slavery, like that was kind of abhorrent to them, and yet is such a common thing in the world. Yeah, like that. That was so you're kind of living in both of them. And one of the reasons why I bring that up is there's a lot of people today that they will say, oh well, there's slavery in the Bible. Therefore God likes it, and I'm like, no, that's not what I'm reading, but that's but yeah, that's a good catch. That's a good catch.
And also the other thing was that every place where they read the river, it refers to the river, the Euphrates.
Oh, okay. All right, yeah.
Verse 26, and also all those horses that he had.
Yeah. Rich mentions all the horses. Well, and that's and also you have with the horses in verse 26, like there's important numbers of horses. So 40,000 stalls and then 12,000 horsemen.
Yes.
Yeah, those are good numbers. Like 40 is kind of an interesting number, but like those are good numbers. We really haven't gotten to too many bad numbers yet. And so what
Excuse me, I don't understand. You're saying that it's a quality?
So you have 40, you can think of like 40 years in the wilderness, So like so the way I kind of view numbers in the Bible is they're kind of like emojis on text messages, They're not saying anything specific, but they're kind of giving an overall idea on how to feel about stuff. So like so like 40, if you kind of have like an idea of like being in the wilderness, but that's struggle, but like God is there. And this isn't definitive, but 12 is like 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples, like you have kind of a completeness idea. 7 also has an idea of completeness in all. That's why 6 is such an interesting number, because 6 is kind of incomplete, like not the full thing. So it doesn't mean that's what these things mean, but like it's adding, I think, a shade of meaning as we come into it, as these authors are putting together all these different stories. That's kind of what we're talking about. So like when he's talking about the horses being 40,000, and then also 1,000, like any kind of multiples of tens, the way I like to describe them as they're like exclamation points. So like when multiples of tens. So the easiest way to explain it is in Revelation, it says that there'll be 144,000 people. You probably heard that number before. Well, that's like 12 times 12 is 144.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Listen, I can hazmat. Yeah. And then you have all the thousands around there, and it's kind of like exclamation points. Yes, kind of idea. So if you see 10,000 or something like that in there, this doesn't work everywhere, and it may not work here, but that's just kind of a general thing to kind of have eyes to see all those things. 3 is also kind of a number. It doesn't come up a lot. Came up at the end of came up in Samuel actually quite a bit. And so yeah, it's just kind of things to look for and things to be watching for. So all those horses, now they weren't Egyptian horses yet, but they are horses. And I think that's important because remember what Solomon was writing before all this and what David's mode of transportation was. It was always the mule. And so Solomon is obviously moving up in the world, right? like that's, and so what else kind of stood out to you in this here?
Verse 7, where he had the 12 officers, one providing him food.
Yeah. So there's also another type of 12 too. Yeah.
And the common people providing food for the king.
Yeah, like, so that would have been it'd been like a tax, kind of like a tax and all that. But it's also 12 tribes of Israel. So it's one for each month, but it's also each tribe. And so the 12, all the tribes of Israel, there's 12 of them. And so they're kind of going around. So you have all of that. Now, I read in the old Jewish Study Bible, their commentary on that is that this could be Solomon centralizing power by having these governors and giving food to that where the tribes aren't as autonomous as they once were, and that he's centralizing more power underneath the king. I don't know, but that was their kind of read of that, and I thought that was kind of interesting. Let's see, what else did you?
I was thinking that he would, instead of spreading the wealth, he was limiting the hardship to 1 per month.
Yeah. Like, it's definitely like a tax, like that's it comes like, oh, it's June's your month, that type of thing. You gotta.
Because it's showing him as king now. King and it's not family. God really wanted for him.
I don't get that indication. It really seems like he's doing things pretty well. Things are definitely changing. Like Israel is definitely becoming prosperous and big. I I did think it was interesting that, you know how I am with all the numbers. So verse 13, at the end of 13, right before 14, like there's 60 large cities and walls and bronze gate bars. Like I thought that was kind of interesting that's 6 was there, the kind of idea of incomplete. So, but it doesn't mean anything bad. It's just incomplete. And then, the last little bit of verse 19, I underlined how it says Og, king of Bashan, that he was the only governor that stayed where he stayed in the land, which that if we combine it with that knowledge that the Jewish Study Bible said that he could have been consolidating power.
I misunderstood. Apparently, it sounded as if he was distinguishing himself as not being an absentee landlord.
Yeah,
He was staying in the land.
yeah.
All the other 11 were
We're
somewhat remote.
well. I got the same thing, that he was like the one that was actually staying on the people that he was governing. I don't think that's the right word for what he was doing in that land, but he was actually living there, where everyone else kind of seems like maybe they're enjoying all of these riches, like in the palace and all that. So I just thought it was interesting that they made a point.
Maybe the other 11 were part of Solomon's court
Yeah,
residence.
yeah,
So they are indeed enjoying the ambiance where
yeah,
one guy is out there still doing what he's supposed to be doing.
yeah, yeah.
At least he's keeping his feet inside.
Yeah, and exactly. And I thought it was interesting that they pointed that out. Like that.
The Jewish Study Bible says that the meaning of that term, stayed in the land, is uncertain.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
then I'll mind my business.
Yeah. Well,
Uncertain.
I mean, it's okay. So it's by them pointing that out, it's obviously an interesting phrase, especially if it's uncertain. One of the things that I thought was interesting was verse 20. It says Judah and Israel. Again, that started happening around the latter half of David's reign. They started pointing out the two of them rather than one nation. That's something that was also new for me, that I didn't realize that they were kind of separating the idea of the two of them out. And it says that they were as numerous as the sands of the sea. Now, if you go to verse 29, they use the same idiom to talk about Solomon's wisdom. And that's not a huge distance from 20 to 29. And I thought it was interesting that they use that idiom for both ways. Yeah, so with it so close
This one mentions
together.
that under the reigns of David and Solomon, Israel stretched from the border of Egypt to the border of Babylonia, approximately 3 times the size of the modern nation of Israel, encompassing land that now belongs to Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon.
Yeah. Oh, they would have been hugely powerful at this point. Like, it's when we get into building the temple, to build the temple the way they did it, you'd have to be hugely powerful. And that's kind of what we're trying to get across here with, like, the people are like the sands of the sea, almost too much to be counted. And that's how the largeness of his heart was like the sands of the sea. That's an interesting thing. And so no one, not even in Egypt, was as wise as he was. And it really, I wrote on top of mine, he was a Renaissance man, kind of a thing, like that's kind of a guy that was just kind of do it all.
In the Eppie Lutheran Study Bible, the note makes a point of saying there are 12 tribes that had a pony up, except kings. He didn't. His tribe was not required.
Oh,
It was 11 that were carrying the water,
okay.
at least according to the.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Is that where they started with the term the do-all, end-all, be-all?
I don't know if it's the start, but like it's
If you will allow me.
yeah.
However, Solomon's own tribe apparently was not required to furnish a monthly share of the provisions of the royal household, If this was the case, such discrimination may have sparked a discontent among the other tribes that fled after Solomon's death.
Yeah. That's super interesting. What you just read there is why I think them saying Israel and Judah like that's if there wasn't any issue, the authors wouldn't be writing Israel and Judah. Mm-hmm. You know, like they even all the way back in Samuel. You know, this is pretty good writing. So is there anything else? It was kind of, I think we're just kind of setting up for building the temple.
The only other thing that I noticed, particularly because it happens rarely, is they mention Solomon's daughters and who they married by name.
Oh, okay.
Not that often in the Bible, but I think there was 3 of them in there.
Yeah.
More politics, but
oh yeah, definitely more politics. Like that's.
But the women's names were mentioned there.
Doing bargaining rights and all that. Yeah, no, that's good. It's good to point that stuff out. Yeah. Let's. Okay. Well, let's go to chapter 5. And so, all right, chapter 5. Yeah, this one's not very long, so we'll share the screen here and go to chapter 5, and then we'll start.
Now Hiram, king of Tyre, sent his servants to Solomon, because he heard that they had anointed him king in place of his father, for Hiram had always loved David. Then Solomon sent to Hiram,
You know how my father David could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God, because of the wars which were fought against him on every side, until the Lord put his foes under the soles of his feet. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary nor evil occurrence. And behold, I propose to build a house for the name of the Lord my God, as the Lord spoke to my father David, saying, Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, he shall build the house for my name. Now, therefore, command that they cut down cedars for me from Lebanon, and my servants will be with your servants, and I will pay you wages for your servants according to whatever you say. For you know, there is none among us who has skill to cut timber like the Sidonians.
So it was, when Hiram heard the words of Solomon, that he rejoiced greatly and said,
Blessed be the Lord this day, for he has given David a wise son over this great people.
Then Hiram sent to Solomon,
I have considered the message which you sent me, and I will do all you desire concerning the cedar and cypress logs. My servants shall bring them down from Lebanon to the sea. I will float them in rafts by sea to the place you indicate to me, and will have them broken apart there. Then you can take them away. And you shall fulfill my desire by giving food from my household.
Then Hiram gave Solomon cedar and cypress logs, according to all his desire. And Solomon gave Hiram 20,000 cors of wheat as food for his household, and 20 cors of pressed oil. Thus Solomon gave to Hiram year by year. So the Lord gave Solomon wisdom, as he had promised him. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty together. Then King Solomon raised up a labor force out of all Israel, and the labor force was 30,000 men. And he sent them to Lebanon, 10,000 a month in shifts. They were 1 month in Lebanon and 2 months at home. Adoniram was in charge of the labor force. Solomon had 70,000 who carried burdens, and 80,000 who quarried stone in the mountains, besides 3,300 from the chiefs of Solomon's deputies, who supervised the people who labored in the work. And the king commanded them to quarry large stones, costly stones, and hewn stones, to lay the foundation of the temple. So Solomon's builders, Hiram's builders, and the Gebalites quarried them, and they prepared timber and stones to build the temple.
All right. That's fun. Okay, so we're making some progress here. So what stood out to you? What stood out to you?
Lee, are you going to say it or not?
I'll let you go.
The Jewish Bible has completely different chapters.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where's the chapter designation?
We started on 15, chapter 5.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so in the chapter designation is
5:15, yeah, instead of 4:20, whatever, or something.
Okay. All right. So let's
I'm going like this.
yeah. Where are we at? Where are we at? All right. So let's actually that's a good that's a good way to talk about the Bible for a second. The Bible, I didn't grow up under this, but this is definitely the idea that I grew up in. Is that basically this thing came down out of heaven at some point, and it appeared to you, and you should not ever tamper with it. You should never touch with it. You shouldn't do like any of that stuff. Like this is the word of God, and you can go to the end of it, and it says that if you change any words in it, at the end of Revelation, like over there, God would make sure that you would grow freckles or something. And I don't know, like that, like that. Nobody doesn't say it.
Now you told me?
Yeah, now I can tell you. Yeah, like that's you don't need your white hair, and some of the biggest revelations that I've had is realizing that that's not what this Bible is at all. So John in the Gospel of John, it describes what the Word of God is. It says that the Word made flesh and dwelt among us. That's Jesus. Jesus is the Word of God. This book is about Jesus. Do I think this book is inspired? Yes. Does God still inspire things today? Yes. There's times when I preach sermons that I would say they are inspired. There are other sermons that I preach that probably aren't. All those things. But also, you probably have known conversations that you probably walked away from like that was inspired. Like that. I don't know where that came from. So the Spirit is constantly moving and causing and living in with us. This stuff that we have here, the Christian Bible, the reason why we have it, and we have it in the order that it's in, is because the church decided that that's like, hey, here's a library of books that we think are helpful for your faith, right? Like that's really what it is. Like some people, like around Easter, you always have like shows on the Discovery Channel. It's like banned from the Bible and all that stuff. That's not really what it's about. Like it's a library of books that the church has deemed helpful. So what that means is like the Catholics have books in their Bible that we don't. Those are the Apocrypha. Like that, it's the intertestamental books is what we call them. And I get why they don't do it. There's some troubling things in the Apocrypha. It's I think a lot of it is unhelpful. I think the story about Judas Maccabeus and Hanukkah is helpful, but all those things. So going back in to chapters and verses, all that stuff was added later, like a lot later. And there are some bad chapter breaks. There are some bad chapter breaks. There's some bad verse breaks. But there are a few in the New Testament. There's a couple of them that are real bad. And whenever I see them, I get very upset because there's a few of them that, let's say, I think, is it Timothy that Paul, or I can't remember which one it is, but one of the books in the New Testament it's laying out how people should live together, and it separates. There's a chapter break in between family relations and slave relations, and you can tell why there's a chapter break there, because then slave owners could go, well, let's just read right here. It says you guys are supposed to obey, and it doesn't have to read much farther than that. So but that's just because, and that's not very much of it. It's just a little bit of it. And so when you're reading this, try to get past all the verses. The verses are there to be helpful. The verse numbers and all of those things.
Can find something.
So that you can find it. Because can you imagine us trying to do a Bible study? It's like, so what? Well, it's about 7 sentences down in the third paragraph. Like that's the chapter, and you look at other old works. A lot of times they'll like every poetry book that I ever had to study in college all had numbers along each line. And that way in class we could go through this and study it. So the Hebrew Study Bible, they have decided to number everything differently in this case, in their organization and all that stuff. And what's real confusing is trying to find some of the books of the Bible in that thing, because all the books of the Bible they're all jumbled.
It's the ring.
Yeah, it's different here. But as for this book, Falling Out of Heaven, when Luther compiled his list of books, the Protestant of the Bible, he almost dropped some books out. He almost dropped out James. Luther did not like James. Which is kind of funny. I like James. And so he almost dropped out James. There was another one in the Old Testament that he almost dropped out. I can't remember which one it is, but but I think it's best to, this is what the church has said. This is good stuff, good for edification to read. Is it inspired? Yeah.
And I always considered it as, different authors giving their version of what happened.
Yeah.
It may not be literally correct all the time.
Yeah.
It might not be historical.
Be careful about all those words. We'll get kicked out if you say stuff like that. Well, I think
it's a neat kind of be powerful that there's no doctrinal conflict between this book and his book.
So doctrinal conflicts. So this book,
be careful what you say.
Generally speaking. So, I saw a quote the other day, because I'm just involved in Bible study things. I saw a quote the other day that says, "Translation is interpretation." Yeah. So the reason why I like doing all these different translations is that even though they're pulling from a lot of the same source materials and all of that, people will translate it differently. They'll see a word. It's like that one phrase that we really don't know what this means. Like that's what they said. So people are having to this is like an idiom. A good example is in the King James Version. Paul says, "Shall we go on sinning so grace may increase?" Our English translations, not the King James Version, is it says "by no means." That's not what Paul says. Paul says a Greek idiom that is basically your favorite expletive "no" is basically what the Greek idiom is. And so but it makes no sense if we translated it word for word in English. The King James Version actually does a really good job. It says, "God forbid." God forbid. But it's much more harsher in Greek when he does that. And so this translating, so there will be little wiggles, but there won't be anything big. All that stuff. And the little wiggles are why I encourage us all have different versions in here. And that when something does sound differently, we can go, oh, it's over there. And then all the differences can be like, oh, maybe it's in the middle somewhere, that this is actually the idea that's being conveyed in there. So I don't think there's...
So I need not worry that I didn't get the best one.
No.
His isn't better than mine or hers.
No, they're all just different. There's different. And I have my favorites. My favorite right now is the NIV. ESV, the English Standard Version, was my favorite for a while. And then I don't like the sentence structure in it. I think it's hard to read. That's just me. And so I like the NIV as just general purpose. But we use this because the thing online, has this. And I'm kind of all over the board on what I use. And so it's I kind of pick up whatever's close.
Got it all.
Well, yeah. I kind of pick up, but you also have, so then we have the different standards of translation. You have, you can have a word for word translation, or you could have a phrase by phrase translation. So, and then this Bible and the NIV is kind of a like a hybrid between the two. The New American Standard Bible, the NASB, is a word for word translation. The problem is they work really hard to get that word right, but that word may not make sense with the words around it, right? Like that. So if you're wanting to so you got to do more translation as you're reading it. Whereas if you get one that's more of a phrase by phrase translations like The Voice or The Message are those that they take. Their goal is to take like a paragraph. You're like, what is being said in this paragraph?
The thought.
And they make it over there. And so like whenever you read The Message, like it reads like a novel, because it's very like they're going through the thought, and you can just, if you just want to sit down and enjoy reading the Bible, and The Message is the way to go. Like it reads like modern English, and you could just, there's nothing that slows you down. You can just fly through that. So we kind of do a hybrid with the NIV and the ESV are kind of hybrids in that. So they'll take phrases and like, well, this phrase kind of means this, but they also try to stay true to the word at the same time. So there's nothing little over there. That's why I like all these different translations. So I don't think you picked the wrong one.
No, you recommended it.
I did.
This is on you.
Yeah. So like that's how that's Chris Escher's view of the Bible. And I had a professor in college that he says that we often get ourselves in trouble by saying by describing the Bible in such a way that it never describes itself. All right. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to try to get myself in trouble by saying this, is that we say that that there's no, how do we say it? There's no errors in this. What is
infallible?
Infallible. There we go. Infallible. Like people describe the Bible as infallible. It never describes itself as that, but it does describe itself as trustworthy. And I think trustworthy is a much stronger word than infallible, because infallible means you're always looking for the fallibilities. You're always looking for like, oh, well, this detail isn't right. I mean, notice how we read this. We're like, was it actually 12,000 men, or is that just like a hyperbolic number, that's kind of conveying this theologically? We're playing with those margins in here, because I think the authors are playing in those margins. I think they're telling us a story, and I love things like Kings, because Solomon is paying for these guys to write this stuff, or the kings are paying for these guys to write down this history, and yet they also want to write down what's actually going on, and so they're playing with it. It's
you make them look good and still.
Yeah. So like that's kind of a cynical reading that I have of it, and you may have a different reading of it, and that's great. That means we all exist together, and we make each other stronger as we study this stuff.
Give them given all this space and room for interpretation.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to come up with their own
Well, that's
million pace. I mean,
yeah.
phrases and a single word.
Yeah. Well, and look at all the different church bodies.
Yeah.
And what I think is the biggest hurt that we've caused is that we're like, this is my view. This is how it is.
You're
I'm right. You're wrong. Then we kick people out and hurt people because my way or the highway. And we really got to be careful about putting that stuff down so firmly in that, because a lot of times when we may say, well, the Bible says it, that's what I think of it, and that ends it. A lot of times what we're actually saying when we say stuff like that is like, well, my interpretation of the Bible says this.
Usually interpretation, that's yours. And that's yours.
Yeah. And so I try. I'm not perfect at this, but I try to be open to what people are going on around it. I have my opinions, and I'll express them. I'll express them, but I don't have problems with other people that express them either. And so at least I hope I don't. And so going through there, but yeah, so that's kind of my view of the Bible. I think this thing is it's my work, and hopefully you can tell by my teaching and preaching of it. Like I love the scriptures, and I think the overall narrative of the scriptures point to Jesus and his redemptive work for us on the cross and his resurrection. Like that's why I got jazzed up at the ending of 2 Samuel there, because like I was just like, oh my goodness, like all of a sudden this stuff is looking familiar, and so that's and so I think it's all part of it all together. So I said some things there that could get me in trouble with a couple of people, but I'm not too worried about it. I'm in my 40s now. What are they gonna do?
No.
Yeah,
But you're only your 40s.
Yeah, only in my 40s. Only in my 40s. Like that's yeah. So
Answered my question I had coming up.
Yeah.
In a a room full of people with all these ideas of their own interpretation.
Yeah.
How would you answer everybody that you are true, or whatever is true?
It's because I'm always right, Ann. Yeah. I could be wrong.
That is an answer that not too many people are comfortable giving.
This church for a while now.
Different.
I know that if he disagrees with you, he'll just say, yeah. And then that's what.
You did answer my question, because you went all around this, and then you came down to it's about God and Jesus.
Yeah.
And he allows us room to agree to disagree.
You want the soul to be different.
And so like that's, and because I think that's important, and that's something I'm always working on too, is the room for disagreement, and because it's I want people to have to be able to have the freedom to be able to see what the inspiration is coming through in this book, in this library of books. And so, yeah. And I think that there's good theological principles and good study habits that can help you see on these things. Like what I think is a good study habit is reading a lot of it at a time and seeing what it says. And so I try to do all that. Yeah. Right.
It's a larger societal problem, tolerance.
Yeah.
And this book
Yeah.
ostensibly is to teach us tolerance, to be able to hear your difference without vilifying you, or marginalizing you, or destroying you.
Yeah.
If we can't do that, then this has been a failure.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I think is what the resurrection of Jesus is all about. It's that all of our bad, all of our sin, all that disgrace, it died on the cross, and we rise as people that are, to quote John, born again. Like all that.
And it's necessary that I qualify. I don't know what I'm talking about.
You want to say something, Lee?
I got a question.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
After all of that.
I don't know we belong in your book.
Okay.
So I propose to build a house for the name of the Lord my God. And what promised my father David, saying, Your son, whom I will set on your throne in your place, shall build a house for my name. Now the notes say the temple is for God's name, not God's physical presence.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, I thought the Holy of Holies was supposed to contain God's presence. Then they refer you to Deuteronomy that says,
That's interesting.
do not worship the Lord your God in like manner. They're talking about the other different religions.
Yeah.
But look only to the site that the Lord your God will choose amongst all your tribes as his habitation to establish his name there. So this house his name, or is this house his presence?
I don't have a good answer for this.
Yes.
So definitely the way I view it, I view Holy of Holies is where the presence of God resides. Like that. That's and I think like his name, because you think about name is not the way I teach confirmation on the was that the second commandment, don't take his name in vain. The way I teach confirmation is like, what does that mean? Like it's not just his name. It's like the way I put it is running God through the mud, and we don't want to hurt other people's names too. Like if you hurt my name, you're not hurting Chris, you're hurting who the name represents. Like name is almost like a reputation or something. Yeah, brand. The brand is a common way I look at it. Like it's that you're running that through the mud. So I think name's a little stronger than just name. Yeah.
Is in this verse, you know that David, my father, could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of warfare.
Yeah.
I have a recollection that he wasn't supposed to build anything in any event, and it wasn't warfare.
I'm glad you're
Then I'm sober.
Yeah. I'm glad that you're bringing that up, because that was definitely on my mind too. That seems like a cleaned up history a little.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Cleaned up history a little bit, and there's a lot of truth in it too, because what we ended up seeing, especially with the census there at the end, is that David his downfall really was that he was a man of war. Like
He's painting his father in a better light.
Than
I remembered.
And that is I can't point to it anywhere. This may be a verse where they get supported, but one of the things that I've always heard is that the reason why David couldn't build the temple is because he was a man of warfare and not a man of peace. And so
basically what it says is because of the enemies that encompassed him. So the Lord placed him under the soles of his feet.
Yeah, it's a nice way of saying it. Yeah, no, like that, like that's. But yeah, I think, and then he quotes that thing from 2 Samuel chapter 7. That promise. That's that quoting there, and so we're getting set to build this temple here, and then So it starts talking about the cedars of Lebanon. The thing to remember is very kind of deserty climate, everything we know about Israel today. And if you want to show your luxury,
Cedar.
yeah, you do things that you don't have.
But it's also very solid, permanent type wood.
Yeah. No, it's a good wood, but they wouldn't have had wood. So like having this big old thing of importance made out of wood, that would have been like a luxurious material. Where we look out and we just see, you see so much stuff. It's the Port St. Lucie and their building codes, they really value oak. And so like that's
Cypress.
Yeah, and yeah, they wanted the cypress too. Yeah. And so it's just something they didn't have a whole lot of. So it would have been this luxurious thing that this, because we have to get that in our mind too. That's some translation we have to do, because they're writing and they look outside and it's dry outside. And so they don't think too much about it. But cedar would have been a hugely luxurious item to be building a massive structure out of it. Like that would have been a luxurious item. And so let's put on our theological hats for a little bit. Theologically, what would having a cedar temple mean? It's not here. I just want to see if you guys could think theologically, having a cedar, not cedar, but like wood temple.
With enclosing,
No
matter what kind of wood it is.
It's not where I was going, but like that's
In the same way.
like to me it sounds like Garden of Eden, so kind of things. So like it's all about the trees in the garden and kind of this idea of, and you think about what wood is, that's like one of the original renewable resources. I don't know. You're sure taking your head.
They take this wonderful wood and they cover it with gold, and they cover it with silver. They cover it with anything. They cover it with anything that doesn't move.
Oh, it probably looked pretty amazing. Yeah.
I was provoked by this. I went online to see the conceptions, and it was garish.
It's like him from the 1920s.
Well, but it was idyllic. It was Baal.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, that's an interesting. Yeah.
Again, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, no. That's good. So he just said it was like Baal, which is like the other gods.
Doing exactly what we're supposed to.
Yeah. Because remember, like God said, it's like, you don't have to build a house for me. I'm fine being on the moon.
I hesitate to criticize someone's taste, but
I was thinking the same thing. All of these gold and everything embellishing.
Yeah.
What should God think of that?
Well, like, and that's what's so interesting about chapter 7 of 2 Samuel, where God is talking to David, and David's like, I'm living in this nice palace. Perhaps it'd be nice for you to live in a nice palace too, maybe a little bit better than mine. And then God's like, no, I've always been on the move with our people. So all right, you guys are doing a good job. I may have created monsters here, but we'll see. But like that. That's
I can see the regret.
Yeah. I may have created monsters here, but like I think you guys can kind of see what's going on, like the garishness, and as we're not gonna have time. I got on the Bible tirade, but it's I think there's some signs in here that the authors are going, like, all of a sudden, I take it that says forced labor in there. All of a sudden, they're using slaves to build the temple.
This is a pyramid.
Yeah, it's a pyramid. Yeah. It wouldn't have looked too dissimilar. Like, have you ever seen like the original, like concept drawings to the pyramids? Like they had them all painted up. Like they would have looked garish to quote someone over here. Yeah.
This is based on an architectural history. This isn't a whole cloth. This came from somewhere. Guess where?
Yeah.
Go up the Nile and check it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, we have experience building pyramids, so
Yeah.
we can handle it.
So I also thought it was interesting the amount of forced labor. It was 30,000.
Yeah.
That was like, why is that the number there? Like that. So if you allow the numbers to kind of talk, and like, what was the last three that we encountered? And that was David choosing the plague. And it was like all those bad things, like the 3 years, the 3 months, the three, like that's all of that. And so, you know, it's like an emoji. It doesn't mean anything concrete. It's just like,
Pay attention.
Yeah, pay attention to all this stuff.
Funny things.
Yeah, but so like when I saw the forced labor, I was just like, huh. But it doesn't. But notice what the authors do. They don't let it all just stick there. So they had 10,000 people a month, and then Solomon had 70,000 who carried the burdens. 80,000. So 70 I thought was interesting, but then it throws an 80, so that throws it all off. Who carried stone in the mountains, and then and besides the 3,300 from the chiefs and the Solomon's deputies. So like it's just all of a sudden it's how I've described Solomon from the beginning. There's all these good numbers, all these good things are happening, but then like just underneath the surface, you're like, there's a little bit of ugliness here. It's like a crack in the foundation, and so that's kind of where we're at. Does anyone else have any?
Did God really lead them to do all that? That was my thought. As I'm reading this, I'm going, where was God saying
to do all this?
Yeah.
So I think I think like this leads us into our own selves. Like so like where is God leading us in doing things, and where is he not?
Where's Nathan and all of Israel saying, yeah, this is such
this is it doesn't seem
things about other things.
But yet the guy from Hiram, or his name's Hiram.
Yeah.
Yeah. When Hiram, he seems to be pretty thrilled about it.
He's got a contract.
He's gonna just like a lot of Hiram was a community just next to the community I grew up in. And that's where all the successful rednecks lived. Like those are all the guys like 4 doors down, 4 or 5 down. My parents have 5 acres, so it's like multiple. I mean, we'll say like 7 lots down from my parents. That guy, successful redneck, when they built the Georgia Dome, his flooring company got that contract. And the thing that he did is he took his old house and he built around it. His small home, he built all the way around it, this huge house, but built around it, around that middle one. And the first vehicle that he bought was, I think, like a Hummer. But the second one was, again, remember, successful rednecks. He bought an F-350 dually, except he limoed it. And it stressed it up. So it had 3 doors on each side and the full bed. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. And all that stuff. So whenever I think of Hiram, that's what I'm thinking of. But like and it's not too far off from what's going on here. Like this guy's, you know, he got the lumber account for the new temple, and he's doing okay now.
You know, the people don't see anything wrong with what's going on because they wanted a king.
Yeah, they wanted a king.
Exactly what they wanted.
And the thing to remember too, and this goes back to our own selves. This is what's hard to say, is that so often we can cause ourselves to get stymied and stuck trying to figure out what's God's will for my life. God is still evident in what Solomon is doing, even though, to quote someone over here, is maybe doing what's garish. He's doing this with slave labor. He's obviously not doing things like, it doesn't seem like God wanted a temple to be built, and yet that ends up becoming the rallying. for so often, like all the stuff that the prophets write about and all that stuff. So I think a lot of times when we're worried about, is this God's will for my life or not, is like, I think we should just realize that we have wisdom that we have today and to go forward in doing that wisdom that we have today. And there's going to be a little bit of bad in it. There's going to be some good in it all the time. And to keep on going forward and keep trying to make ourselves better and to continue going for the good. And so like that's like I think that's kind of how we should do it. That's easier said than done.
Makes me think of my dad. Almost his three favorite words: "Do your best."
Yeah, like that's so over there. You had a weird face.
Yeah, did not God dwell in the tent/tabernacle of the Lord in Exodus?
Yes. Yes.
So why the departure for the new temple, the new tabernacle?
I think he ends up coming.
Just putting his name there instead of him dwelling.
Well, that's why I think the name is bigger than I think they're just using a different set of terms. And it could be also, I don't know. So some of what I read here, they're trying to protect some things for why they don't happen later. Like that's.
Is it because they need to put roots down for him? Is it because they want to take a certain area on this world and say,
it could be.
They want to claim.
This
they
is
want to claim
the
God.
seed. This is the spot.
There is definitely a righteousness
shared.
that is presented in the Old Testament of the wandering people, like that when the things kind of fall apart when they locate themselves into this one thing. That is something that's kind of presented. I'm not saying that is righteousness, but that is something that's kind of presented all kind of throughout here. So yeah. Like, is there anything else? This guy, we had.
One happy part of this whole thing, as I was thinking about the forced labor and all of that, was the fact that there was a treaty.
A treaty, yeah. Always lots of treaties.
It's a good time
this one they spelled out.
Yeah. There's lots of treaties. All the treaties are going to be Solomon's downfall. like that. That's like that. Do what?
Are you saying then by the interpretation of all this grandeur, God had in mind not for himself, but for the people, because he knew this is what people are like and this is what they would like?
I think it's in my mind. I don't really try to clean it up all that much. Like, you can definitely see that Solomon has this unbelievable amount of wisdom, and there's this story that expresses that, and you can say that he's living in that. But it all kind of, like, as we'll get to it, and we can see that even though they're not doing everything perfectly, they're going forward with this building of the temple, and we see that the temple ends up being that kind of rallying point for God and his people. That ends up, the prophets make a big deal out of all of that, and so there's good and bad. It's messy, and I think. Like, that's like he's using slave labor to build the temple, but I'm not sure that I'd be comfortable with saying, oh well, they should have never built the temple. Like that's I wouldn't be comfortable with ever saying that. I am comfortable with saying like they shouldn't be using slave labor to do it.
Do you think that even holds a candle to the new heaven coming down in Revelation? And
well, that's that. Yeah, and how that's. Over the top. Yeah.
That's also God's choice of time and place.
Yeah. And so that the new city that comes out in that picture of in Revelation at the end, the city comes down, and the way I kind of view that is like that is showing that God is coming down and alighting on the creation once again. And then that's my concept of the temple, and that's what Lee was talking about, that God's presence is in that temple and in the tabernacle, and that his presence is again back in Jesus, and his presence is there in the Spirit, where he abides, and his name exists in all of us. And then at the end, it's not about us ascending to heaven, but heaven coming down to earth. And so yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So, but me personally, I'm happy with it being messy there. That's it. You got the temple there, you got some slave labor, you got some questionable styling choices. Well, questionable.
Question, Chris. The slaves, if they weren't building the temple, what would they have been doing? There's not a whole lot of businesses going on at that point.
Well, it's I don't know.
It's hardly an.
They would have
What? They would have been eating and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would want to, like the other thing is they could be doing something other besides that. It's using all the same language from the Egypt account, and that they're being forced into it, and that's something that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen much. So like that's kind of what the issue is that Solomon is becoming Solomon's becoming Pharaoh, like kind of that picture of David is, especially when you start bringing in what the temple looked like, and it would have looked like those pyramids type of thing, and all of that stuff. So it's this whole idea of overpowering and all of that, and so yeah, it's a theological thing that's kind of coming out, I think, and so because fiscally, yeah. Make a lot of money off of
makes me
forced
think
labor.
Ego's getting in the way.
Yeah. So, all right. Remember, no class next week, and because I won't be here, and then we'll pick it back up. So everyone online, thanks for watching.